Going into the archery season for most landowners is filled with the anticipation of seeing all your hard work translate into seeing more bucks and having the opportunity to take a mature hit lister that's been showing up on summer trail cams. Some landowners get it done every year while others struggle. No doubt, one of the biggest factors for consistent success on mature bucks is location. Hunters in states with an older age class of bucks are going to see and shoot more mature bucks than in states where a high percentage of bucks taken are 1.5-year-old yearlings. It's hard to put a 4.5-year-old on the wall when he's already in the freezer at 1.5. High hunter density per square mile is the number one factor for low populations of mature bucks, as you can see in this map from the QDMA posted by Kip Adams. This map is pretty accurate, but there's a couple issues I want to point out. Both upper and lower Michigan are lumped into the same stat, but the UP has very little population and the habitat and weather is more like Ontario, Canada than the lower peninsula. So the lower peninsula by itself has a much higher hunter density per square mile. And if you take the southern half of the lower peninsula, where most of the population is, it's not uncommon to have 30 hunters per square mile. That makes it a lot tougher for any buck to make it to his second birthday, especially when Michigan gives its Orange Army 35 days to shoot 2 bucks with a firearm. If you took those Michigan hunting regulations with all those hunters and applied it in Iowa, Illinois, or Kansas, the majority of those mature bucks would be wiped out in one season as well. When you look at a heat map of Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett entries for a 10-year period, it's easy to see where the highest number of mature bucks per square mile exists. That's not just because of the great habitat, but it's also due to the DNR hunting rules in that state. For example, look at the counties along Wisconsin and Michigan UP border. The quality of habitat and numbers of hunters are almost identical in those counties. Yet Wisconsin has a lot more trophy bucks entered into the record books than the Michigan counties. One reason is that the firearm season in Michigan lasts twice as long and starts earlier in the rut than it does in Wisconsin. And Michigan allows hunters to take 2 bucks while Wisconsin allows 1 buck. That's a huge difference. Now look at the counties bordering the Ohio and Kentucky line. Both states have a 1 buck rule, but even though Ohio has more hunters per square mile, Kentucky's firearm season starts in the middle of the rut when mature bucks are most vulnerable during the second week of November, while Ohio's firearm season starts after Thanksgiving, which is after the peak of the rut when bucks are a lot less visible. That allows them a much better chance to survive to the next age class in Ohio. In southwest Michigan, where I live in Kent County, I've only ever seen a handful of Pope and Young bucks in 40 years of hunting. But when I go on freelance hunts in states like Ohio and Kentucky, it's not uncommon to see a handful of Pope and Young bucks on a short 3-day hunt. For many years, Michigan hunters would shoot 70% of the 1.5-year-old bucks every fall, leaving only 30% to see their second birthday. You may have heard of an interesting stat from Michigan trophy bow hunter John Eberhard. He's taken 50 mature bucks with his bow all on public land or knock-on-door permission property. 30 of those bucks were shot in Michigan. The other 20 were taken in big buck states. Out of the 30 Michigan bucks, 29 of them all had previous wounds from other hunters. Of the 20 bucks taken out of state, none of them had a previous wound. This explains why Michigan has so few mature bucks compared to the big buck states and why they should not be hunted with the typical average hunting tactics like seen on TV. About 8 years ago, Michigan started a 3-point on a side antler point restriction rule in 12 counties in the northwest corner of the lower peninsula. This has made a huge improvement to the numbers of mature bucks taken even on public land. This shows that even in areas of sandy soils and harsh winters, you can have trophy bucks if they're allowed to make it past their second birthday. But in other high hunting pressured areas of Michigan, as well as states where there are no antler point restrictions, it can be tough for some landowners to let a 2.5-year-old buck walk by. Like the saying goes, if I don't shoot him, my neighbor will. In that situation, the best thing you can do is to improve your deer habitat in the way of more secure cover and unpressured food plots. Making those bucks feel as though your property is not hunted will keep them on your property during daylight hours and not get in trouble on your neighbors. That's what Bill in Kent County started doing about 4 years ago on his small 40-acre property. For over 30 years, it was rare for Bill and his family to even see a 3.5-year-old buck. In 2017, Bill and I started working on his property to create bedding areas for bucks and does and secure travel routes for deer. Then food plots were added to help hold deer on the property. Hunting pressure was reduced to hunting smart and not hard. Better buck sightings started to increase on his trail cams, and after 2 years of working on the property, he shot the biggest buck ever taken with a bow on the 40 acres. Now Bill is passing 2.5-year-old bucks. Last year he passed up a 3.5-year-old with messed up antlers twice. This trail cam photo of him was taken on day 5 of Michigan's gun season on a food plot during daylight hours. That was unheard of just a few years ago. This buck was eventually shot by his neighbor. This is why a lot of landowners have started an area co-op with neighboring landowners to start their own self-imposed age or antler point restriction. This is really working well in a lot of areas of high hunting pressure. So if your property is in an area where only a few mature bucks exist, there are ways to improve your hunting besides hope and luck. Until then, just set realistic goals based on the area you're in, and don't let social media pics of big bucks cause you to feel the pressure to put a trophy on the ground. Just get out and enjoy God's creation this fall with your family and friends and make some great memories that'll last a lifetime.